I was the prince she dumped, yet she treated me like a safety net. Even after her night left her and she couldn't afford a $3,000 rental, her first instinct was to crawl back to my place. She showed up with a bunch of groceries from her parents and some religious trinkets as a peace offering, claiming that if I truly hated her, I would have changed the door codes weeks ago. Little did she know, before I could even say a word, her friend Chloe barged in with luggage, complaining that my apartment was too small for all their clothes. That one offhand comment confirmed she had been living with that loser for months. So, without another word, I tossed both of them and their bags right out onto the sidewalk. My girlfriend, Olivia, posted an update on her secret Facebook account. She wrote that a princess doesn't necessarily have to marry the prince, because maybe the knight is her true destiny. I could only scoff at that. If she wanted to play princess, I didn't mind. However, I wondered what kind of princess sneaks around at midnight, sending thirsty messages to some other guy while her boyfriend is asleep. Back when she went on that business trip to Chicago, she sent me a message and immediately unsent it. I waited a few minutes before casually asking what it was. She claimed it was just a typo, but I had already seen the notification. She had written that she wasn't sure if going out with him was the right move, but she felt she needed to settle a regret from her past. My heart dropped the moment I read those words. I tried to FaceTime her right then and there, but she declined the call. She texted back, saying she was at dinner with coworkers and couldn't talk. I pushed a bit, asking her to send a picture of the food. She sent over a few shots of the plates, and I could clearly see the restaurant logo on the napkins. I did a quick search and saw it was one of those trendy spots that everyone posts about on TikTok. I sat there staring at my phone for a second before opening a delivery app and placing an order from that exact restaurant. I managed to get the driver's number and told him I was looking for someone there, offering him extra cash if he could sneak a few photos or a quick video of the dining area. I sent him a $50 tip through the app immediately. Seeing how much I was willing to pay, he agreed to help me out without hesitation. I gave him a quick description of Olivia and what she was wearing, then I sat there waiting. My mind was a complete mess during those few minutes. Part of me wanted him to find her, but the other part was praying he would find absolutely nothing. About 4 minutes later, my phone buzzed. He sent a photo and asked if the woman in the frame was the one I was looking for. Even though I expected the worst, seeing her there made my blood run cold. In the shot, she was sitting at a private table with a guy, and there wasn't a single coworker in sight. The driver followed up with several more photos. Some were blurry, but I recognized the guy instantly as Ethan Grant, her high school sweetheart. She had gone to a reunion 2 months ago and posted a photo with him on her Facebook. I remembered it clearly because her friend Chloe had commented on how Ethan was still as hot as he was back in the day. Chloe even joked about whether he still had that same charm. Olivia had replied with a suggestive smirk emoji. Chloe followed up by saying that since Olivia had had a major glow-up, Ethan was probably kicking himself for letting her go. When I brought it up back then, she told me he was just some guy who had a crush on her in high school that she turned down. She even tried to reassure me by saying he was engaged and that I had nothing to worry about. The driver sent over a dozen photos that night, and the way they were looking at each other was definitely not platonic. My head was spinning, and I ended up smoking half a pack of cigarettes just to stay calm. I tried calling her later that night, but it went straight to voicemail. Around 10, she finally FaceTimed me, but she was standing in the hotel lobby instead of her room. She claimed she was just coming back from a show at Navy Pier and hadn't heard her phone, adding that she was exhausted and ready to crash. She cut the call short, saying the elevator was coming and the reception was bad. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I spent the whole time scouring every single one of her social media profiles, looking for any shred of evidence I could find. Finally, I found something suspicious in a Facebook post she had liked. It was a close-up of 2 wine glasses posted on April 20th, which was the exact day of her high school reunion. The account seemed pretty standard at first, but I noticed a specific female user who was constantly commenting on all the posts. It felt too frequent to be a coincidence. I started digging through that profile, and the more I saw, the more suspicious I became. Eventually, I realized that the account actually belonged to Olivia. Back in April, That account had posted the exact same quote she shared on her main Facebook page about childhood dreams being like flowers that never fade. It was a perfect match. What really set me off was a post from the previous night, where she wrote about turning off the lights to be more uninhibited and how they belong to each other. Reading those words made me feel sick. I felt a mix of nausea, rage, and pure suffocation. The worst part was that she had been acting like the perfect girlfriend the entire time. We were literally in the middle of planning our wedding, discussing the budget, the venue, her dress, and where we should go for our honeymoon. Everything seemed so normal on the surface. It was all going according to plan, or so I thought. I didn't get a single second of sleep that night. First thing the next morning, I called a friend to dig up some dirt on Ethan. Olivia had mentioned he was getting married soon, and I needed to know if that was true. She was supposed to be back that day, but she texted me saying things were running late, and she would be too busy to check her phone. I knew exactly what that meant. Around lunchtime, her secret Facebook updated with a scenic photo tag at Millennium Park in Chicago. My suspicions were confirmed. Right then, my friend Marcus called me back. He had been working fast and managed to get a full profile on Ethan in just a few hours. It turned out Ethan was an agent for a big insurance firm. His fiancée was a local teacher who still lived with her parents, so they weren't living together yet. Marcus even sent me his cell number and social media handles. It was confirmed that he was weeks away from his wedding, and yet here he was cheating on his fiancée with my girlfriend. The irony was disgusting. I figure it was just the typical story of a high school flame being reignited at a reunion. The guy was obviously a total loser, but I wondered if he even knew Olivia was in a committed relationship. I decided to play the long game. I set up a burner account and messaged him, pretending to be a potential client who was looking for a new insurance policy. He accepted the request almost immediately, acting all professional and polite. I played along, telling him I needed a comprehensive plan for a family of 4 and asked for his best recommendations. He went into full salesman mode, lecturing me about how insurance needs to be tailored to specific family needs and budgets. He was laying it on thick. He sent over some brochures and case studies of his successful clients. Then, he apologized and said he was about to board a flight, promising to follow up as soon as he landed. After he stopped talking, I checked his public Facebook profile. It was all professional headshots and inspirational quotes, nothing like the suggestive stuff on his private account. 2 hours later, he messaged me again, saying he had just landed and was ready to talk numbers. I ignored him and texted Olivia instead, asking when her flight was getting in. She had been vague about her travel details, claiming her schedule was still up in the air. I knew the real reason she was being evasive was that she didn't want me showing up at the airport. She didn't answer, but she had no idea I was already parked at the terminal. I blended into the crowd at arrivals, keeping my eyes glued to the doors. Eventually, I saw her walking out in oversized sunglasses, clutching Ethan's arm while they laughed together. They hopped into a taxi the second they stepped outside. My car was levels away in the parking garage, so there was no way I could tail them. By the time I walked through my front door, she was already there. She acted completely normal, even running up to give me a big hug like nothing had happened. She claimed she kept the flight a secret because she wanted to surprise me. She even pulled some airport snacks out of her bag, lying through her teeth about how she went out of her way to find them for me. I knew she just grabbed those at the terminal gift shop, but I kept my mouth shut. I spent the next few days playing the role of the oblivious boyfriend. While she was in the shower, I went through her phone and read her messages with Ethan. They were absolutely disgusting, filled with things I never thought she was capable of saying. I had no idea she had this side to her. To the world, she was a sweet and reserved woman, but her messages revealed a completely different, trashy personality. It was a wake-up call. The most pathetic part was that she wasn't doing any of those things for me. She was doing them for him. I messaged Ethan back, telling him I had a massive budget and wanted to buy a full suite of life and health insurance policies. I asked him to draft several different options so I could pick the most expensive one. I hinted that if this went well, I had plenty of wealthy friends I could refer to him. I even posted a few photos on my burner Facebook of my friend's Ferrari and a massive mansion to sell the rich guy persona without giving away my identity. It worked like a charm. He started sucking up to me constantly, calling me sir, and checking in every morning. He would even send me weather updates and reminders to stay dry, acting like we're best friends. It was pathetic. Sometimes I'd wake up to his messages and think it was my mom checking in on me. I'd give him a short thanks every now and then just to keep him on the hook. A week later, Olivia posted another cryptic status on her secret account about how some people aren't brave enough to chase true love. It was clearly directed at Ethan. That post made my blood boil. If she wanted him to be brave, I was more than happy to give him a little push. I had played the part of the prospective client long enough. It was time to pull the trigger. That night, Olivia actually was at a work dinner and even FaceTimed me to prove she was with her coworkers. While she was busy, I messaged Ethan. He had been begging for my phone number for days, but I kept him strictly on iMessage to keep my distance. I asked him some dummy questions about investment-linked policies. He sent back a wall of text trying to sell me on it, but I didn't read a single sentence. 10 minutes later, I sent him a text that would change everything. I wrote that even though I was married, meeting up with her had made me realize I couldn't let go. I said that our old flame was rekindled and that I was bored with my current life. I told her I didn't want to betray my wife, but I couldn't help how I felt. Ethan replied with a confused question mark. I quickly unsent the message and sent him a voice note instead. I told him I was incredibly sorry and that the message was meant for someone else. He laughed it off and said he hadn't even read it. I used the mistake as an excuse to call him, asking if he wanted to grab a drink. I told him I was going through some stuff and needed a listening ear. He jumped at the chance to bond with his rich client. I knew I could meet him because Olivia had lied to him. According to their texts, she told him she had been single since January. She was playing both of us. The truth was that I paid for her meals, her rent, her spa days, and she even used my car to go out with her friends. She was living off me while telling her ex she was totally available. She was a real piece of work. I picked him up in a rented luxury SUV. The first thing he said when he hopped in was that he hadn't seen this ride on my Facebook profile. I just gave him a vague smile and didn't bother explaining. I wanted to keep up the act of being so rich that a new car was no big deal. He kept rambling about how great it must be to have money and swap cars on a whim. He seemed genuinely impressed that a high roller like me wanted to hang out with him. He talked the whole way to the bar while I just gave him one-word answers. Once we had a few drinks, I put on a sad face and confessed that the text from earlier was actually meant for my first love. I asked him for advice, acting like a lost soul who couldn't get over his ex. He just laughed and told me it was perfectly normal for men to feel that way, as long as I didn't let my wife find out. I pressed him further, asking what he would do in my shoes. By then, he was 6 beers deep and started getting real with me. He told me I wouldn't believe it, but he was in the exact same boat. Once he started talking, he couldn't stop. He admitted he was engaged, but had run into his high school crush at a reunion recently. He said she was even more beautiful now, and he just couldn't help himself. Apparently, they went straight to a hotel after the reunion ended. I felt like I was going to throw up, but I kept a straight face and nudged him to tell me more. He said he felt a little bad for his fiancée, but Olivia wasn't satisfied with a one-night stand. She had been blowing up his phone ever since. He had eventually run out of excuses and had to lie to his fiancée about a business trip just to spend a weekend with her. Now, he complained that Olivia was getting too clingy and was pressuring him to call off his wedding, which he had no intention of doing. I suggested he should just leave his fiancée for her, but he just shook his head. He told me that while he loved the excitement, Olivia was just like a side dish, fun for a while but never the main course. I had to admit, the metaphor fit. His only mistake was thinking this side dish belonged to him when he was actually stealing it from my table. He started bragging about his fiancée's family. She was an only child, her dad was a doctor, and her mom was a teacher. They had great retirement plans and plenty of money. Her parents had even promised to help with the grandkids and had already bought them a house. They were set to move in right after the wedding with zero debt. I was disgusted. It was obvious he wasn't staying with his fiancée out of love. He was just staying for the financial security her family provided. I poured him another drink and told him he was the luckiest guy alive for having a girl like that throw herself at him. He grinned and leaned in close, telling me he had a secret to share. I knew whatever he was about to say would be bad. He told me that during the Christmas holidays last year, Olivia was the one who sought him out first. They had spent 2 days together at a mountain resort while she was still supposedly committed to me. The betrayal went back much further than I thought. I felt a knot in my stomach. I remembered those 2 days over Christmas when she went completely MIA, claiming she was just busy with family. So that was the truth. I felt like a complete idiot for believing her no-cell service excuse in this day and age. I acted like I was just tipsy, hiding the rage inside. I casually told him that what he did was pretty messed up. He immediately started making excuses, saying she was the aggressor and that they were just finishing what they started back in high school. He claimed he thought it was a one-time thing after Christmas, but then she cornered him at the reunion and he just couldn't say no. He acted like he was the victim of her attraction. I didn't buy the regret nonsense for a second. We sat there for hours while he bragged about every single time they had hooked up and where they had gone. I made up some stories about my own supposed affairs to keep him talking. He was acting like we were brothers, but I wouldn't even let a guy like him wash my car. I thought he was just some random guy she met, but he had been cheating with her behind my back for a long time. There was no way I was letting this slide. I went online and ordered the trashiest lingerie I could find and had it shipped directly to his fiancée's house with his name on the package, making it look like he accidentally sent it to the wrong address. He thought he could have his cake and eat it too, but I was about to ruin everything for him. I was going to make sure Olivia and her first love got exactly what they deserved. After our drinks, Ethan started using me as his personal therapist. He started complaining that his fiancée was acting suspicious and was breathing down his neck. She was checking his phone and computer constantly, making passive-aggressive comments. He bragged about how he had already deleted all the evidence. He told me he was getting nervous and thought about ending things with Olivia. I looked over at her sitting on the couch, completely unaware, and gave him some very helpful advice. I suggested he meet her in person to break it off, warning him that if he didn't, she might snap and go straight to his fiancée. I told him he needed to handle it before things got out of control. He agreed and said he'd set something up. I couldn't believe the nerve of this guy, discussing his affair with me while I was sitting right there. As for Olivia, I started pickling fights over the smallest things. I stopped caring when she cried and would just walk out and leave her alone for hours. The Cold War went on for a week until she finally told me she was going out with her friends and wouldn't be back that night. She said she couldn't stand the constant arguing. I told her to have a blast. The second she left, I messaged her friend Chloe, telling her I was planning a surprise proposal and needed her help. I knew Chloe might tell her, but I didn't care because the proposal was a fake anyway. Chloe was all over it, offering to meet up that night to start planning the whole thing. We set a time, but 30 minutes later, she called back with some lame excuse about being tired and forgetting she already had plans with Olivia. She asked to reschedule. I just laughed and told her it was fine. That afternoon, I drove over to Olivia's office and waited for her to finish work. I needed to see exactly where she was meeting her first love. Around 5:30, she walked out and hopped into a cab, and I trailed her from a safe distance. They ended up at a fancy French restaurant downtown. I waited a few minutes before putting on a baseball cap and a mask to head inside, making sure I was incognito. The place was upscale, with private booths and dim lighting. I told the hostess I was meeting someone and gave her a description of Olivia. She pointed toward the back, but I made an excuse about using the restroom. Once she was gone, I circled around the other way and found a spot where I could see the whole dining room. I spotted them easily. Olivia was glowing, laughing, and flirting with Ethan like they were in some romantic movie. I pulled out my phone and snapped several clear photos of them together. My first instinct was to call Ethan's fiancée right then and there and send her the location. She was already suspicious, and this was the perfect smoking gun. But then I remembered Ethan's plan to break up with Olivia that night. If I called now, he might just talk his way out of it, or she might not show up in time. Plus, if she called him first, he'd know someone was watching them. I decided to play the long game. I waited in my car for over an hour, hoping they'd take it to the next level. Finally, they walked out of the restaurant. It looked like Ethan hadn't broken the news yet because Olivia was still all over him. They walked hand in hand toward a hotel nearby, and I recorded the whole thing on my phone. I couldn't follow them inside without being spotted, So I stayed by the entrance and finally made the call to Ethan's fiancée, Sarah. I told Sarah her fiancé was at a hotel with another woman. She didn't believe me at first, so I told her to check her iMessage for the video I was about to send. I sent the footage from my burner account. She called me back instantly, her voice trembling as she demanded to know who the woman was and how I got the video. I didn't give her any names, just the address of the hotel. I told her to hurry up if she wanted to catch them. 30 minutes later, she showed up with a friend and a massive guy, and they stormed into the lobby. I could hear them shouting at the front desk from outside. Sarah was demanding their room number, and the staff was refusing to give it up, causing a huge scene. I tried calling Olivia, but it went straight to voicemail. I called Chloe next, but she didn't pick up either. They were clearly avoiding me. I texted both of them, playing the part of the apologetic boyfriend and claiming I was on my way to Chloe's to pick Olivia up. Chloe called me back almost immediately, sounding panicked. She told me Olivia was still too upset to see me and that I should stay home, but I insisted I was coming over no matter what. She sounded incredibly nervous and said she'd check with Olivia and get back to me. I told her that if I didn't hear back, I was just going to show up at her door to apologize in person. I sat in my car and watched the hotel entrance. 20 minutes later, Olivia and Ethan walked out of the elevator right into the path of Sarah and her backup. Everyone froze for a split second before Sarah absolutely lost it. She didn't say a word. She just lunged at Olivia and started swinging. Sarah was usually so reserved, but she was relentless. She slapped Olivia several times and even managed to land a kick, screaming about how Olivia was a homewrecker. Olivia was hysterical, cowering behind Ethan and screaming at Sarah to stop. She threatened to call the police, which only made things worse. The threat just poured gasoline on the fire. Sarah had her male friend hold Ethan back while she and her other friend double-teamed Olivia. Olivia was on the floor, trying to protect her face while Sarah kept screaming at her. Sarah called her every name in the book, telling her everyone knew she was sleeping with Ethan. Then Sarah did something I didn't even anticipate. She pulled the lingerie I'd sent to her house out her purse and tried to shove it onto Olivia's head. Sarah was shouting for everyone to see what kind of person Olivia was, claiming that Ethan had bought the lingerie for her. A crowd was starting to gather, and people were pulling out their phones. Everyone was recording the spectacle, and I made sure to get a clear video of the whole thing too. The hotel security finally stepped in, threatening to call the cops if they didn't stop. Sarah's friend intimidated the guards, telling them to go ahead and call the police. He told them he'd just tell the cops that Olivia was a prostitute and that the hotel was running a brothel. The threat worked, and the staff backed off. Ethan was useless, just standing there like a coward and weakly asking everyone to stop fighting. Sarah screamed that she was going to deal with Ethan once she was done with Olivia. The whole lobby was in total chaos, and I felt a wave of pure satisfaction washing over me. I wanted to stay and watch the show, but I had more work to do. An hour later, Chloe called me with a lie, saying Olivia was drunk and crashed at a friend's place, promising to take care of her. I told her I wasn't worried and hung up. The next morning, Olivia called me, sounding absolutely miserable, and said she'd be home that evening. I told her I just wanted her home safe. When she walked in around 9 that night, she looked like a wreck, and her face was still visibly bruised and swollen. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw the living room. I had decorated the entire place with white and pink balloons, making it look like something out of a movie. I had lined the floor with candles and rose petals leading to a giant heart made of flowers. In the center was a neon sign that read, "Marry Me." Her parents were there too. I had driven 2 hours to pick them up myself. I even invited all of her closest friends to witness the moment. A slideshow of our happiest moments was playing on the big screen, and the vibe was incredibly emotional. I walked up to her with a massive bouquet of roses and looked her in the eye. I told her how sorry I was for our recent fights and promised to be a better partner. I talked about how much I cherished our time together and how I wanted our future to be even better. I made a grand promise in front of everyone that I would buy her a house and a car in her own name before we got married, just to make sure she felt secure. She was completely overwhelmed and started sobbing into her hands. After the humiliation she went through at the hotel, She probably thought I was her knight in shining armor. She must have thought I was the world's biggest pushover, offering her a house and a car on a silver platter. Anyone else in her position would have been swept off their feet. Her parents were thrilled and were already telling her to say yes, while the rest of the room started chanting for her to accept. She was about to speak when my phone suddenly started ringing. It was a call I had been waiting for. I had set a special ringtone and timed it perfectly so it would interrupt the moment. I made a show of being annoyed by the interruption, but as I looked at the screen, my expression slowly changed to one of pure shock. The room went silent as everyone watched me. I looked at Olivia with a look of betrayal before turning to her parents. I told them that the proposal was going to have to wait, and they immediately started panicking. I didn't say a word. I just mirrored my phone screen to the TV and told them to see for themselves. The slideshow was replaced by the photos I had taken earlier. The first photo was of Olivia and Ethan at the French restaurant, looking incredibly close. The tears on her face dried up instantly, and she frantically asked who had taken the photos. I told her I had no idea and that a stranger had just sent them to me. I pointed out the date and time, which matched up perfectly with her business trip to Chicago. The photos had a watermark from a phone brand I didn't even own, so she couldn't possibly trace them back to me. She was trapped. She went pale, her moment of triumph turning into a nightmare. She tried to play it off as a chance encounter with an old friend, but no one was buying it. I wordlessly swiped to the next photo. It showed her feeding Ethan with her own fork, looking completely infatuated. The tension in the room was unbearable. Everyone, including her own parents, was staring at her with judgment. She started rambling, making up some ridiculous excuse about testing the food to see if it was too spicy. It was pathetic. I felt a sick sense of satisfaction watching her squirm. I swiped to the next photo, which showed them walking out of the airport together, hand in hand. Her mother finally snapped and demanded to know who the man was. Olivia could only stammer that he was just an old friend from school. Her voice was barely a whisper. Her mom smacked her on the back and told her to explain herself before things got even worse. Olivia tried to say it was all a coincidence and that Ethan was just helping her because she tripped. She compared it to helping an old lady across the street, which was a joke considering the photos. It was the most ridiculous lie I had ever heard. I had never seen anyone help an old lady by interlacing their fingers with hers. I didn't even have to say anything. I just sat back and watched her dig her own grave. Every person in that room knew exactly what was happening. Then I played the video. You could hear a pin drop in that room. Olivia looked like she was about to faint the moment it started playing. It was the footage of her and Ethan entering the hotel together. I calmly asked her if that was also just a big misunderstanding. Finally, I played the grand finale. The video of the fight in the hotel lobby, where Sarah was beating her up and trying to force that lingerie onto her head. The humiliation was absolute. One of her friends actually gasped out loud, and her parents looked like they wanted to disappear. I sat on the couch and buried my face in my hands. Everyone thought I was crying, but I was actually struggling to keep from laughing. Her mother, her voice shaking, tried to tell me there must be some mistake. She begged me to let her talk to Olivia privately to get the truth. Her friends all made quick exits, one after another. Once the room was empty except for us and her parents, her father suddenly lunged at her and slapped her across the face. Olivia was a sobbing mess, clutching her cheek in shame. Her father turned to me and started making excuses, saying they had spoiled her too much, but that she was a good person at heart. He told me we were so close to getting married and that we should try to work things out. I just rubbed my eyes, acting like I was completely broken. I told him that I had been so excited for this night and that I only wanted to make her happy, but that someone had sent me these photos out of the blue. I told them I needed some space to clear my head and suggested they take Olivia home with them for a while. I couldn't even look at her. I walked in my room and locked the door, completely ignoring Olivia's pleas. I have no idea when they finally left, but she spent hours crying outside my door before she finally gave up. She spent the entire night blowing up my phone with long, rambling texts. At first, she was all apologies and promises to be better, acting like she was truly sorry for what she did. Then she switched to blaming me, saying I only cared about money and didn't understand her needs. I found it hilarious considering I had been paying for every single thing in her life for the last 2 years. She was gone by the time I woke up. Chloe texted me later that day, letting me know that Olivia was staying with her for a while. Her parents called me too, trying to convince me to give her another chance and promising she would never cheat again. I didn't answer any of their calls. I checked her secret Facebook again and saw she had reposted that same princess and knight quote. It was clear she was already moving on. I didn't care about her princess fantasy, but I couldn't get over the fact that she was playing us both for fools. It was time for phase 2 of my plan. I reached out to Ethan again, and he had some great news for me. His fiancée had called off the wedding and dumped him. Everything was going exactly as planned. I was thrilled. If they hadn't broken up, he and Olivia wouldn't have had the chance to be together. I was worried he might try to win Sarah back, but he was so bitter about the breakup that he was ready for something new. I played the supportive friend and told him he was lucky to have a beautiful woman like Olivia waiting for him. I told him if I were him, I'd go all in. I used his peanut metaphor against him, saying that even peanuts are useful for making oil, which is a daily necessity. I told him he should seize the opportunity before it was too late. He was so angry at Sarah that he decided to take my advice and give it a shot with Olivia. I told him I hoped they would be very happy together. A few days later, Olivia texted me saying that we were done and that I should be grateful for the time we spent together. She had the nerve to say I didn't lose out in the relationship. It was clear she never loved me. She only stayed because I was paying the bills. I was just a paycheck to her. I checked her secret account and saw a photo of her holding hands with Ethan. The caption read that she was finally choosing love over everything else. I blocked her, packed up all her belongings, and had them delivered to Chloe's place. I told Ethan I was away on a business trip and gave him vague answers whenever he asked about the insurance policy. I hired a few people to start making regular complaints to Ethan's firm. I didn't want to overdo it and make it obvious, so I kept the frequency low but steady. A couple of complaints a week were enough to ruin his reputation at work. Meanwhile, Olivia's secret Facebook was full of cringy posts about her amazing new life with Ethan. It was honestly pathetic to watch. A month later, I decided it was time for another anonymous tip, so I sent Olivia a text from a burner phone. I told her that Ethan had spent over $100 at a sketchy massage parlor. As expected, they had a massive blowout. Ethan came crying to me again, complaining about his terrible luck. His work life was falling apart, and his boss was constantly on his case. He complained that Olivia was no longer the sweet girl he remembered, and that they were fighting constantly. He even said that all women were the same and just caused drama. I told him he was being ungrateful and that most guys would kill to be with a girl like Olivia. He admitted the honeymoon phase was over and that he was starting to have regrets. He complained that Olivia was high maintenance and didn't know the first thing about housework. He started comparing her to Sarah, who was always willing to help him around the house even before they lived together. Between his work troubles and their constant fighting, Ethan was reaching his breaking point. I just sat there thinking about how much he deserved every bit of it. I kept up the nice guy act and told him that relationships take work and they just needed more time to adjust. I kept the pressure on his company, making sure his work life stayed miserable. One day, he called me, sounding completely defeated, and asked to meet for dinner. I met him at the same bar as before. After a couple of drinks, he started venting about his life again. He told me he had been fired. I acted like I was shocked and asked what had happened. He blamed it on wealthy, entitled clients who made his life hell and reported him for every little thing. He was so bitter about losing his job. I gave him a sympathetic pat on the back and told him he'd find something better. He even apologized for not being able to finalize my insurance policy yet. I acted offended, telling him I thought we were friends. He just looked at me with a sad, empty smile. He started complaining about Olivia again, calling her a spoiled princess who did nothing but spend money. He couldn't wrap his head around how much she could blow through in a single day. He listed all her expenses, from expensive nails and hair salons to designer clothes and spa treatments. He said he was going broke just trying to keep up with her lifestyle. He said her stuff was taking over his whole apartment. In just 1 month, he had already spent thousands of dollars on her. He said she was constantly nagging him about buying a house and a car, as if he was just choosing not to have them. He was so frustrated by her demands. I told him I believed in him and that he'd be successful eventually. I knew he was used to having a woman pay for everything, and now that he was on his own, he couldn't handle the pressure. A few days later, Olivia actually had the nerve to call me. She wanted to know why I had canceled our joint credit card. I just laughed and told her I wasn't interested in paying for another man's girlfriend. She started crying, calling me heartless. She admitted they were close, but swore she never actually cheated. She even tried to guilt-trip me by bringing up our happy memories. She clearly didn't realize I knew everything. I told her I saw them together at the hotel and hung up. She tried to lie and say they had separate rooms. I told her I had video proof of them going into the same room and to stop embarrassing herself. There was a long silence before she asked if I'd believe they just stayed in a room with 2 beds. I couldn't believe her audacity. I told her to get lost and blocked her number. Chloe kept checking in on me, trying to see if I was still into Olivia or if I'd ever take her back. I told Chloe I wasn't an idiot and that I was completely over her. The next morning, Ethan called to apologize for being such a mess the night before. I told him to call me anytime. I was more than happy to keep listening to his life fall apart. A month later, Ethan finally called and told me he had dumped Olivia. He said they were just a toxic match and couldn't make it work. I wasn't surprised. I had orchestrated the whole thing because I knew a spoiled princess and a lazy moocher would never survive a real relationship. Olivia had deleted all her mushy posts about Ethan. Her last post was some dramatic nonsense about mistaking a street lamp for the moon. I just thought she was pathetic. Her grand romance had lasted less than 2 months. A few days later, Olivia called me, begging to stay at my place for a few days. She claimed she couldn't find an apartment and was willing to sleep on the couch. I told her that there were plenty of affordable apartments out there and that she just needed to look harder. She complained that she wanted a nice 2-bedroom place, but couldn't afford the $3,000 rent. I just laughed and asked her why that was my problem. I told her that I only paid for her lifestyle when she was my girlfriend, and now that we were over, she was on her own. I was blunt with her, hoping she'd get the hint and leave me alone. But I underestimated just how desperate she was. Before I could even change the codes to my apartment, she let herself in and started unpacking her things. She even brought some weird gifts from her parents, clearly trying to get back into my good graces for the money. She acted like she was surprised I hadn't changed the codes, as if it was a sign I still loved her. I was about to go off on her when Chloe walked in and did my job for me. Chloe had followed her over with her own luggage. They thought I wasn't home, and Chloe started complaining the moment she walked in. Chloe was complaining about Ethan, saying how he didn't make enough money and his apartment was too small for all of Olivia's clothes. She said she was glad to finally get Olivia's stuff out of her place after 2 months. That was all the confirmation I needed. I walked out of the bathroom, and Chloe looked like she'd seen a ghost. She started stammering that she was just joking, but the damage was done. I didn't need to hear another word. I grabbed Olivia's bags and tossed them into the hallway. Then I shoved both of them out and slammed the door. They spent half an hour screaming and banging on my door, but I just ignored them until security finally showed up and kicked them out of the building. I heard later that Olivia was on the hunt for a new rich guy to pay her way. She was still getting plenty of attention, but she was holding out for someone with real money. Her parents were even helping her, telling her she needed to find someone who could provide the lifestyle I had given her. It was laughable. Ethan messaged me again, saying he found a great house but was a little short on the down payment. He finally just came out and asked me for a loan. I told him my money was tied up in investments, but suggested he take out a high-interest personal loan to secure the house. I promised to give him the money to pay it off in a few months. He was so excited and even offered to buy me dinner once the paperwork was done. He told me he'd taken out a massive loan to cover the cost. I just texted back, "Dumbass," and blocked his number. I didn't feel a shred of guilt because he had brought it all on himself. Leave them to a lifetime of mutual misery. It is the perfect end for 2 selfish souls.